Listen up, people. That's right. It's time to listen to the sparks of bliss in your life. I'm your host and life coach, Caroline de Posada from Miami, Florida. And this podcast is an invitation to join me in upgrading our mindset, wellness, and relationships so that together we create a life that unlocks our bliss. Join me each week as we explore practical strategies, inspiring stories, and the moments of clarity, or as we like to call them, los momenticos, that make the world a little more magical. Consider this your weekly dose of wisdom in your pocket. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Hey, listeners. Welcome to episode number 10 of Blissin' Up. I love that word, listener. I haven't used it up until now in the podcast, but I was thinking about it and I'm like, that is what I want to build. A community of people who listen for bliss. And I love the name Blisseners. So let me know if you like it too. Today's episode, it's actually kind of funny that I'm introducing this term Blissener today because, and it's actually kind of funny in general that the way that this podcast has evolved, because I started this podcast at a time when I was going through a really rough time with my ear. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I shared about my ear infection and how painful that was. And I was like in the midst of my launching this podcast about bliss, was like, I was like struggling and feeling no bliss. And on today's 10th episode, I am going through probably one of the most difficult times in my family life, other than when my father was in the end stages of cancer. And this is not a moment when I'm feeling bliss at all. It's quite the opposite. You know, if I had started this podcast a year ago, when I was at my lake house on this very weekend, enjoying my family and pitching forts in the living room and playing board games and canoeing and paddling, I could have talked about all the sparks of bliss. And yet here I am this summer going through a really hard time, like a really, really hard time with my family. My sister is struggling with a toe wound that never healed. I talked about it a little bit last episode. And last episode, I shared that we had been able to save her toe. And, on this episode, because I am recording in real time, that's no longer a viable option. It turns out she is not going to save her toe. And we are having all sorts of different conversations. The conversations have taken a turn for the worse. And, we're all pulling in together and dealing with this very difficult time. And I'm sharing this with you right now, despite the fact that I'm still in the thick of it. I've thought about this so much. It's like, what do I do on this podcast? Do I show up in my full, transparent vulnerability and share exactly as things are when they're happening? Or do I put aside what I'm going through so that I can share principles and concepts about mindset, wellness, and relationships, while giving myself the opportunity to grieve and heal and mourn and feel all the things that I'm feeling at the current time. And I don't know how I'm going to do this going forward forever, because I think there will come times in my life where I need to process things quietly, and I'm going to need a certain level of privacy, and maybe I won't be able to share on the podcast in that moment what I'm feeling. But today, in the present moment that I am in, I feel that my responsibility is to share what I'm going through right now, because I believe this is the work. This is the work, is paying attention for the sparks of bliss when there is none. It's living this life in the both and, having both pain and joy, both worry and peace, both struggle and success, right? This is the work. And I think a lot of us get stuck in the idea that we need to get through whatever we are going through and postpone joy or momenticos of bliss until the bad thing is over. And then, we wait for big moments to happen. And we kind of live our life like postponing the momenticos for the big ones. And then maybe even when we get to the big ones, feeling like they didn't meet our expectations. So I've decided that I'm going to share with you how I'm handling this right now as I'm in the thick of it, and how it works for me. And my hope is that that serves you in some way. My hope is that if you are in the thick of it, if you are struggling with anything, that you can adopt some principles and some tools to live a life of magic, of synchronicity, of joy, and be able to accept the realities and the hardships that are presented in your life on a regular basis, because we can't avoid them. We can't escape them. We can't avoid them. So at this moment, I am getting ready to go to Fort Myers to be with my sister. We are awaiting a big surgical procedure. There's an amputation is involved. We are talking to a lot of different doctors. We are gathering as a family, my mom, my brother, my sister, myself. We're rallying together to support her in her journey and to take care of each other and to kind of like have each other's backs. And we are struggling. And keeping it together at the same time. So as I thought about you and about this episode, I thought, what am I actually feeling right now? And a few things came up. One thing is that I have the awareness and the recognition that I am currently in a bit of a state of blur. Now, I have my life coach, Susan Ford Collins, wrote a book called Blur. And I remember living through a moment of blur in her life when her husband was dying of cancer at the very same time as her sister was dying of cancer, and other things that happened in her life at that time. And I remember working with her during that time and seeing how she handled things and being able to see the blur that she was in and also seeing her come out of it. So that was a lesson for me, and it was very, very helpful. So I felt that I should share with you my journey of blur. How do I know I'm in blur? Well, yesterday I went to turn on the griddle and then apparently forgot to turn off the griddle, and then it was like smoking hot, and I was 100% convinced that I had turned it on, that I had turned it off. But my husband was like, "You are the only one that touched the griddle and you almost burned down the house." So that was a lapse in memory judgment that, at that moment. Another thing is I went to hard-boiled eggs. Like I went to go hard-boiled eggs, and I was going to put them in this little hard-boiled egg device that I had. And then I changed my mind and I was like, no, I'm going to put them in the Instapot because I think that's easier. And I put the eggs in the little machine, and then I turned on the Instapot, and then I couldn't remember, like I turned them both machines on at the same time. Like I don't remember doing this, but I must have turned on the hard-boiled machine and the Instapot at the same time. And then they were both going, and I didn't know if I had put eggs inside the Instapot because I'm looking at this hard-boiled machine and all these eggs hard-boiling. So I waited it out. And when the Instapot finished and I opened it, there were no eggs in there. I had just turned on the machine. And then I had hard boiled them in the hard boiled machine, which was not my intention. And my husband was like, you need to be a little bit more mindful. Like, you need to come back to the moment. You're so scattered. And it's because I'm in blur. I'm making some big decisions. I'm having some big conversations. I'm focused on a lot of things, and mindless tasks like that escape me. But despite the fact that I'm in blur, I continue to participate in my core principles, in staying clear, in organizing my life around my priorities, in tapping into my resilience, in managing my emotional intelligence. So one of the things that I keep doing for clarity is I keep exercising. That's one of the things. And I compartmentalize. So the eggs was a moment where I did not compartmentalize. I was like immersed in my thoughts and stuff. So I was mindless. But when I go into my coaching sessions, I like legitimately compartmentalize and I step into the highest version of myself while I'm in that session, understanding that in that present moment, that is the only thing that is required of me. And that has allowed me a lot of clarity in those moments. So I don't have clarity throughout the entire day, but I do have sparks of clarity. And I also compartmentalize when I'm talking to a doctor. Like, I focus, and I get into this, present moment so that I ask the right questions, so that I'm efficient, so that I'm diligent, so that my sister gets the best care. So that's one of the things that I have experienced is blur. And if you want to read Susan's book, I'll put it in the show notes. It might help you if you ever experience blur, if you're feeling like you're in blur. Another thing that I'm doing to tap into my clarity is success filing and journaling. Write things down. I am success filing every single day. I took my son to the movies. I went to the dentist. I got a workout in. Those are like my big ones for right now. I think I've run out of successes for the day, but that gives you an idea. And I kind of have been journaling because I know that when this season is over, I'm going to look back and I'm going to be shocked at all the things that maybe I would have forgotten had it not been that I was writing them down. So that's one of the other things that I'm doing. And then living by my principles. I often talk about the concept of life being rigged in your favor. And it's an interesting thing to assert that life is rigged in your favor when things don't look favorable. That's a big one. And despite the fact that the things have not looked favorable for my sister in the recent weeks, I continue to find evidence that life is in fact rigged in our favor. From synchronistic meetings that I've had with the exact people that I need to bring into my life to take care of her, to the relationships that I had that are the exact relationships I need to take care of her, to just the way everything has been playing out. So it's been an interesting thing to look at these circumstances as if they're rigged in our favor, even when they're not favorable, because it allows me to continue to look for moments of gratitude, for the silver linings, for evidence of luck, and to behave as if things are always going to work out better, even when they're bad. And that's a big one. Like it's a big one. Another principle that I've been living is honoring my intention. So I am a big person of setting intentions. If you listened to the episode last week, episode number 9, I talked about my July intention of interruption. And right now, My life is a series of interruptions, but my focus and my world is really consumed by my sister's situation. So I have been using intentions as a way to allow me to stay present. So, for example, I went to the gym and I said, oh, I'm interrupting my blur by doing something for my body so that I have clarity. Yesterday, I just said I took my son to the movies. I spent the entire day talking to doctors. I was not present with my children at all whatsoever. It was a hard day. It was a really, really hard day. And my son came up to me and said, Mom, why don't you and I go on a date? Don't you think that would be good, for us to go out on a date? And I looked at him in the eyes and I said, you know what, Ryan, I can't today, buddy. I can't. I'm not in the place right now where I can think about going out on a date or give you my full attention. I just need a little bit of your grace and a little bit of your compassion today so that I can get my bearings. And he looked at me, he said, that's okay, Mommy, but why don't we plan to go to the movies a little later so that you have this time now and then we can go to the movies and you can get your mind off of it later. And I said, well, it would have to be much later because I have coaching sessions and this. He was like, what time would work for you? I said, well, it would have to be, my last coaching session is at 6. So it would have to be after 7:30. And then he looked up the movie times and he came back. He was like, there's a movie at 7:45. Why don't we have a date then? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to interrupt this day with a date with my son. So I finished my session. I walked into my house and grabbed my son and we went and we got our movie tickets. He got a little bit of candy for himself, his little tradition, and we had a date. And we went to see Despicable Me 4. And that was beautiful. It was wonderful. And when we left, I felt good that I had been able to interrupt my day just because I was being intentional and because I was allowing to exist in the both and, which can be really hard when you're in the thick of things. Speaking of interruptions, I'm going to interrupt this episode with a brief invitation for you to join us next week for RejuvaFast. RejuvaFast is a 5-day mimic fast in which I do along with my dream partner, Dr. Sanchez. We have combined life coaching with health and an integrative approach to wellness and health coaching so that we can bring you a program that allows you to activate autophagy, regenerate your cells, clean up your insides, and do it in a fun, supportive community. And actually, have a good time, despite the fact that it's a little bit of a challenge. But these challenges are what makes our life even better. It's a small, hard thing for big, big reward and lots of sparks of bliss. So I invite you to join us. We're starting July 14th to the 19th. If you want more information, just go to www.rejuvafast.com. You'll get to spend 5 days with me and Dr. Sanchez holding your hand through this journey. And I think you're absolutely going to love it. It's the perfect interruption to a summer months where you can invest just 5 little days into your health and wellness. I hope to see you there, guys. The last principle is this balance between stoicism and magical thinking, which I've never really talked about in the podcast, but I will share with you briefly. I'm a huge stoic, huge. I'm a huge fan of Ryan Holiday. I love the Daily Stoic podcast. I love the Daily Stoic book with daily reflections on Stoicism. I love to learn about Stoicism. I'm a big believer in the philosophy of Stoicism. So Stoicism is really about living a life with principles, about regulating emotions, not about avoiding them. It's about regulating them. And it's also about acceptance, accepting how things are, accepting where you are, accepting life as it is. It's about surrendering the outcome, really, and releasing expectations. At least that's my interpretation of Stoicism. And that acceptance and that practicality and that realism has really allowed me to procrastinate worrying when things are hard and uncertain. It's allowed me to accept circumstances when they are hard and they are unfavorable. It's allowed me to show up with grace, with a lot of grace and a lot of strength, removing a lot of the drama that we often get into by feeling like life is unfair, or, why did this have to happen this way? Or, it's so hard. Stoicism has been a philosophy that has allowed me to eliminate a lot of those thought patterns and show up differently. But what has really elevated my life is a sense of spirituality and a sense of magic. And I say magical thinking because I believe that all the things that happen in my life are so magical. And I have embraced magical thinking in this incredible way. And it has really changed me from a person who was just stoic and practical to a person who is stoic and blissful, who is able to receive the synchronicities, to receive the blessings, to receive the joy, to receive the bliss, the sparks of bliss and the momenticos, because I'm willing to listen for them. So that balance between stoicism and magical thinking during this time has been very useful. Very, very, very useful. Maybe I'll talk about this more in another podcast at another time. But for today, I just wanted to introduce that concept to you about that. So basically, that's how I live in the thick of things. I strengthen my core. I practice Stoic philosophies. I embrace magical thinking. And I honor the principles, all of the principles that I believe are my truth and that serve me and that keep me going, even when it's hard, even when the tendency could be to say, well, I used to think this way, but it doesn't work anymore. Or, it's not applicable in this case, or only thinking these things and honoring them when things are easy. I've tried my best to honor them and to continue to embrace them. And that's not to say, by the way, just a side note here, that's not to say that I'm not wrong about things, because sometimes what was my truth at one moment is not my truth anymore. And sometimes I'm wrong. And sometimes, I have a certain way of thinking and then I change my mind. And I've had identities that no longer serve me and I've stepped into new identities. So it's not that I'm not willing to change my mind, but these are principles that as of right now, I am still honoring and following because I believe that they are universal truths, and I haven't been proved otherwise yet. Not that I can't be, but I haven't yet. So that's where I'm at. And living with intention, just living with intention. So I hope this message serves you. Showing up today on this podcast in real time is my way of practicing excellence. It's my way of deciding that this work matters, that this is the work, that our relationship, yours and mine, matters, and that both and can exist, can coexist. We can both be struggling and be succeeding at the same time. So to show up today in this podcast, going through what I'm going through, to show up for each of my coaching sessions, going through what I'm going through, to go to the gym, to go on the date with my son, are all pennies in the penny jar that I am putting in to declare my core, like to declare my strength, my inner core, to know that I can do hard things, to know that I can get through this, and to know that I am currently practicing stepping into a higher version of myself. And I don't know if you need to hear that today. I don't know if that will serve you, but I know that life is not always easy. Life is not always, blissful. And sometimes you can't find a spark of bliss for the life of you, even though you are doing all the things. And what I would have to say to that is keep listening, stay open, be curious, open your eyes, and keep putting pennies in the penny jar, because you never know when a spark of bliss will surprise you. You never know when it will show up for you, and you don't want to miss it. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope on this sacred Sunday, you are living your best life and, enjoying a blissful existence. And if you are not, I hope that you know that you are supported, you are valued, you are seen, and I'm right there with you. Have a great day, everybody.
That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being here. I am deeply, deeply grateful for this time to connect. Now, if you are feeling called to dig deeper and really work on elevating your mindset, your wellness, and your relationships, and you're looking for a life coach to work with you one-on-one and really help you just retrain your brain, define success on your own terms, and just live healthier, happier, and more meaningful life, well, I invite you to schedule a consult with me. Let's have a conversation and see if working together is in our future. You can find the link to calendar of consult right there in my show notes, but you can also connect with me on my website, carolinedeposada.com, or send me a DM on Instagram at Caroline de Posada. I'm so excited to connect with you a little further. Now, as far as this podcast goes, I would so appreciate if you could leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help us so much. And like my friend always says, the project is big and you're a part of it. So thank you for helping me spread good in this world.